Tyrell Washington noticed something wasn't right with his 6-month-old son every time his mother-in-law came to visit. The baby would cry uncontrollably, and something in those cries made Tyrell's protective instincts kick into overdrive. At first, he thought he was being paranoid, but as the pattern continued, he knew he had to investigate. What he would discover about his mother-in-law's true nature would lead to a desperate 911 call and change their family forever. Comment below where you're watching from today, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. The autumn breeze rustled through the maple trees lining the quiet suburban street where Tyrell and Rebecca Washington had made their home. Through the large bay window of their modest 2-story house, Tyrell watched his wife Rebecca gently rock their son Liam in the nursery chair, her blonde hair catching the late afternoon sunlight. The sight usually filled him with joy, but today, his mind was preoccupied with the upcoming visit from his mother-in-law, Judith Anderson. "He's finally down for his nap," Rebecca whispered as she tiptoed out of the nursery. She wrapped her arms around Tyrell's waist, pressing her cheek against his back. "Mom called. She'll be here in about an hour." Tyrell tensed involuntarily at the mention of Judith. Even after 3 years of marriage, their relationship remained strained, wrapped in a veneer of forced politeness that fooled no one except perhaps Rebecca, who seemed determined to see only what she wanted to see. "You know," Rebecca continued, moving to face him, her blue eyes hopeful, "maybe this time will be different. Liam might not react the way he always does." Tyrell finished, trying to keep the edge out of his voice. He ran a hand over his closely cropped hair, a gesture Rebecca had come to recognize as a sign of his anxiety. "Becca, you know as well as I do that every single time your mother comes over, our son cries like he's terrified." Rebecca's smile faltered slightly. "He's just going through a phase. Lots of babies get fussy around certain people. Remember how he used to cry whenever Marcus would hold him? That was different," Tyrell argued. "Marcus wears that strong cologne. This is something else. The way Liam cries around your mother. It's not normal, Rebecca." Before Rebecca could respond, the conversation was interrupted by Liam's soft coos coming through the baby monitor. Rebecca's face lit up at the sound. Perfect timing. He'll be fresh from his nap when Mom arrives. Tyrell watched his wife hurry up the stairs, her excitement palpable. He remembered when they first met at the university library 5 years ago. Her infectious optimism had been one of the things that drew him to her. Now, sometimes he wished she wasn't quite so determined to see the best in everyone, especially her mother. The memory of their wedding day surfaced unbidden. Judith Anderson, standing in the church garden during the reception, glass of champagne in hand, corners of her mouth tight as she watched her daughter dance with her new husband. "I just want what's best for her," she had said to another guest, not realizing Tyrell was within earshot. "I hope she would end up with someone more suitable, like David from the country club." That moment had set the tone for their relationship. Judith had never openly opposed their marriage, but her disapproval seeped through in countless small ways. The slight pause before introducing Tyrell as her son-in-law, the way her smile never quite reached her eyes when he spoke, the subtle suggestions about other men Rebecca could have married. The sound of a car door closing pulled Tyrell from his thoughts. Through the window, he saw Judith walking up the pathway, her silver hair perfectly styled, wearing one of her signature pastel twin sets. She carried a large gift bag, another expensive toy for Liam, no doubt. Her way of trying to buy his affection, Tyrell thought cynically. "Mom's here," Rebecca called out, already heading down the stairs with Liam in her arms. The baby was alert and happy, gurgling as he played with a strand of his mother's hair. Judith's entrance brought the usual flurry of activity. Hugs exchanged between mother and daughter, compliments about how big Liam was getting, polite inquiries about Tyrell's work at the architectural firm. Everything seemed normal until Judith reached for Liam. The change was immediate and dramatic. The moment Judith's manicured hands touched him, Liam's face crumpled, and he let out a piercing wail that made everyone wince. "Oh dear," Judith said, quickly passing him back to Rebecca. "Still not warming up to Grandma, I see." There was something in her tone, a hint of satisfaction, that made Tyrell's jaw clench. "He's just tired," Rebecca said quickly, bouncing Liam gently. "Here, Mom, let me make you some tea while he calms down." But Liam didn't calm down. His cries grew more hysterical, his little face red with effort, tears streaming down his cheeks. Tyrell stepped forward to take him, and the moment Liam was in his father's arms, the crying began to subside. "Well," Judith said, smoothing her perfectly pressed slacks, "I suppose some children are just more particular than others about who holds them." The emphasis she placed on particular made Tyrell's blood boil, but he kept his expression neutral. He learned long ago that confronting Judith directly only made things worse, especially for Rebecca. "I'll take him upstairs," Tyrell said, noting how Liam clutched his shirt tightly, as if afraid to be taken away from his father. "You two catch up." As he carried Liam up to the nursery, he could hear Rebecca and Judith's voices floating up from the kitchen. "I don't know why he gets like that, Mom. He's usually such a happy baby." "Perhaps he's just oversensitive," Judith replied. "It runs in some families, you know." Tyrell held Liam closer, watching as his son's eyes began to droop, exhausted from his emotional outburst. The baby looked peaceful now, but Tyrell couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. Later that evening, after Judith had left and Rebecca was cleaning up the kitchen, Tyrell stood in the nursery, watching Liam sleep. The soft glow of the night light cast gentle shadows on the walls, and the steady rhythm of the white noise machine created a cocoon of tranquility that seemed worlds away from the tension of the afternoon. "He's finally sleeping soundly," Rebecca said quietly, appearing in the doorway. She looked tired, the strain of constantly mediating between her husband and her mother evident in the slight furrow of her brow. "Becca," Tyrell began, keeping his voice low, "we need to talk about what happened today." "Tyrell, please," Rebecca sighed. "Not tonight. Mom was trying her best. You know she wants to be involved in Liam's life." "Does she?" Tyrell turned to face his wife. "Because sometimes I wonder if she wants to be involved in his life or if she's just trying to prove something. Did you see how he reacted to her? That wasn't normal, Rebecca. That wasn't just a fussy baby. He was terrified." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. "What are you saying? That my mother is somehow what? Hurting our son?" "She's his grandmother, Tyrell. She loves him." "Does she?" Tyrell repeated, more forcefully this time, "because I've never seen her show him any real affection. It's all for show, just like everything else with her. The expensive gifts, the weekly visits, the offers to babysit. It's like she's trying to prove she can be a good grandmother despite." "Despite what?" Rebecca's voice had an edge to it now. "Despite the fact that her grandson is mixed race? Is that what you think this is about?" The words hung heavy in the air between them. Tyrell ran his hands over his face, suddenly exhausted. "I don't know what it's about," he admitted. "But I know our son is trying to tell us something, and we need to listen." Rebecca moved to the crib, gently adjusting Liam's blanket. "I know Mom wasn't supportive when we first got together," she said quietly. "But she's trying, Tyrell. She's not perfect, but she's trying." Tyrell watched his wife's gentle movements, remembering the day she had stood up to her mother, declaring she would marry him with or without her blessing. Rebecca had always been stronger than she looked, but her desire to maintain peace sometimes overshadowed her judgment. "I just want to protect our family," Tyrell said, moving to stand beside her at the crib. "All of us, including you." Rebecca leaned against him, her voice barely a whisper. "I know, but I can't choose between my mother and my family, Tyrell. I can't." "You might have to," Tyrell thought, but didn't say aloud. Instead, he wrapped an arm around his wife's shoulders, both of them watching their son sleep peacefully, unaware of the tension his reactions had created. As they stood there in the quiet nursery, Tyrell made a silent promise to his son. He would get to the bottom of this, no matter what it took. Something wasn't right, and if no one else was willing to acknowledge it, he would have to be the one to uncover the truth, even if it meant risking his relationship with Rebecca in the process. The sound of Liam's steady breathing filled the room, a reminder of what was at stake. Tomorrow, Judith would return to babysit while Rebecca went to work at the hospital, and Tyrell would begin his own investigation into why his son seemed to fear his grandmother so much. But for now, in this moment of temporary peace, he held his wife close and tried to ignore the growing knot of dread in his stomach. The morning sun filtered through the kitchen blinds as Tyrell sat at the breakfast table, pretending to read the newspaper while actually watching Judith with Liam. She had arrived early, dressed impeccably as always in a powder blue cardigan and pressed khakis, her silver hair styled just so. Rebecca was upstairs getting ready for her shift at the hospital, leaving Tyrell to observe the increasingly concerning interaction between his mother-in-law and son. Liam sat in his high chair, his small hands gripping a plastic spoon, but his usual cheerful demeanor had vanished the moment Judith walked through the door. His lower lip trembled, dark eyes wide with what Tyrell could only describe as apprehension. "Come now, precious," Judith cooed, her voice syrupy sweet as she approached with a bowl of baby cereal. "Let Grandma feed you breakfast." The moment she reached for the spoon, Liam's face crumpled. The wail that followed was heart-wrenching, filled with genuine distress that made Tyrell's chest tighten. "Oh, for heaven's sake," Judith muttered, quickly plastering on a smile when she noticed Tyrell watching. "He's quite dramatic this morning, isn't he?" Tyrell set down his newspaper. "He was fine before you tried to feed him." "Well, babies can be so unpredictable," Judith replied, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Rebecca was the same way at his age. Absolutely refused to let my mother-in-law near her for months." "This is different," Tyrell said quietly, standing to take Liam from his high chair. The baby immediately quieted in his father's arms, tiny fingers clutching Tyrell's shirt. "This happens every single time you're around him." "Tyrell, are you suggesting everything okay down here?" Rebecca appeared in the doorway, adjusting her nurse's uniform. Her eyes darted between her husband and mother, sensing the tension. "Just fine, dear," Judith answered smoothly, though Liam's being a bit fussy this morning. "Nothing I can't handle." Rebecca crossed the kitchen to kiss Liam's forehead, then Tyrell's cheek. "Mom's watched hundreds of kids at her daycare over the years, honey. She knows what she's doing." Tyrell bit back his response, not wanting to start an argument before Rebecca's shift. Instead, he focused on getting Liam to eat, painfully aware of Judith's critical gaze. "I'll be home by 6, Rebecca said, gathering her things. "Mom, thanks again for helping out." "Tyrell, try not to worry so much, okay?" After Rebecca left, the house fell into an uncomfortable silence, broken only by Liam's occasional whimpers whenever Judith came too close. Tyrell delayed leaving for work as long as he could, watching as Judith moved around the kitchen with practiced efficiency but notable coldness toward Liam. "I know what you're doing," Judith said suddenly, her back to Tyrell as she washed dishes. "Watching me like I'm some sort of threat. I raised 3 children of my own, ran a successful daycare for 20 years. And how many of those children were black?" The words left Tyrell's mouth before he could stop them. Judith turned slowly, drying her hands on a dish towel. "I don't see color, Tyrell. I never have. I treat all children equally." "That's the problem, isn't it?" Tyrell countered. "You say you don't see color, but you do. You see it every time you look at me, at Liam." "I think you're projecting your own insecurities onto this situation," Judith replied calmly. "Now, don't you have work to get to?" "I'm perfectly capable of handling my grandson." Throughout the day, Tyrell found himself unable to focus on his architectural drawings. His mind kept wandering to Liam, to the way his son's entire demeanor changed around Judith. Was he being paranoid? Was his own strained relationship with his mother-in-law coloring his perception? He called home during lunch, his heart racing when Judith didn't answer until the 4th ring. "Hello." Her voice sounded irritated. "Just checking in," Tyrell said, trying to keep his tone neutral. "How's Liam?" "Sleeping." "Finally. He's been quite difficult today, crying for no reason. Must be teething." In the background, Tyrell could hear Liam's distinct cry. "That doesn't sound like sleeping. He just woke up," Judith said quickly. "I need to go tend to him." The line went dead, leaving Tyrell staring at his phone, his sandwich forgotten. That evening, after Judith left and Liam was finally sleeping peacefully in his crib, Tyrell tried to broach the subject with Rebecca again. "I just think we need to consider other options for childcare," he said carefully, watching his wife fold laundry. "Maybe that daycare center near your hospital?" Rebecca sighed, setting down a tiny onesie. "Tyrell, we've been over this. Mom is doing us a huge favor. Do you know how much daycare costs?" "Some things are worth the cost," Tyrell insisted. "Becca, you don't see how he is with her," when you're not around. The crying, the fear. He cries with lots of people, Rebecca interrupted. Remember last week at the park? He cried when Mrs. Johnson tried to hold him. For like 10 seconds. This is different. This is... Tyrell ran a hand over his face in frustration. This is constant. Every time she's near him, every single time he's terrified, Rebecca sat on the edge of their bed, her expression torn. She's old-fashioned, Tyrell. She grew up in a different time, but she's trying. She loves Liam. Does she? Tyrell asked softly. Because I've never heard her say it. I've never seen her actually show him affection. It's all just performance. Like she's going through the motions of what a grandmother should do, without any real feeling behind it. That's not fair, Rebecca protested, but her voice wavered slightly. She brings him gifts, she helps us out. Gifts aren't love, Rebecca. And helping us out? Maybe she's doing that more for you than for Liam. A tense silence fell between them. Finally, Rebecca spoke, her voice quiet but firm. One more chance, Tyrell. Give her one more chance. If things don't improve, we'll look into other options. But please try to see past your history with her. Try to give her the benefit of the doubt. Tyrell wanted to argue further, but the pleading look in his wife's eyes made him hold back. One more chance, he agreed reluctantly. But I'm going to be watching very carefully. Later that night, unable to sleep, Tyrell stood in Liam's nursery, watching his son's peaceful breathing. The moonlight cast soft shadows through the window, creating patterns on the walls decorated with animals and alphabet letters. Everything looked so normal, so safe. But something nagged at him, a persistent worry that wouldn't let go. He thought back to all the times he'd seen Judith interact with Liam, trying to pinpoint exactly what bothered him about her behavior. It wasn't just the lack of warmth. There was something else, something in the way she looked at Liam when she thought no one was watching. Was he seeing something that wasn't there? Was his own complicated relationship with Judith making him overly suspicious? After all, she had never been openly hostile to him, never said anything explicitly racist. Her prejudice came in subtle forms. The way she tried to set Rebecca up with other men before their wedding, her comments about suitable partners, the slight hesitation before introducing him to her friends. But would those same prejudices extend to her own grandson? The thought made Tyrell's stomach turn. He remembered the day Liam was born, how Judith had smiled for photos but seemed almost reluctant to hold him. At the time, he'd attributed it to the general awkwardness between them. But now, Liam stirred in his sleep, making small sounds of distress. Tyrell reached into the crib, gently rubbing his son's back until he settled again. The trust in Liam's face as he relaxed under his father's touch made Tyrell's heart ache. Babies didn't cry without reason. He knew that much. Their instincts were pure, uncomplicated by adult prejudices and social niceties. If Liam was afraid of Judith, there had to be a reason. The next morning, as Tyrell prepared for work, he made a decision. He would give Judith one more chance, as he'd promised Rebecca. But he would also trust his instincts, and more importantly, his son's instincts. Something wasn't right, and he was determined to find out what it was. "I love you, little man," he whispered, kissing Liam's forehead before heading out. "Daddy's going to figure this out." As he drove to work, Tyrell couldn't shake the feeling that the racial tension that had always simmered beneath the surface of his relationship with Judith was somehow connected to Liam's distress. But there was a piece missing, something he wasn't seeing yet. The thought that his son might be experiencing prejudice at such a young age, from his own grandmother no less, filled him with a mixture of sadness and anger. One more chance, he reminded himself. One more chance to prove him wrong. But as he pulled into his office parking lot, Tyrell knew in his heart that something would have to change. The question was, would he be able to convince Rebecca before something happened that they couldn't take back? The small security camera felt heavy in Tyrell's hands as he stood in the nursery, early morning sunlight barely creeping through the windows. He had picked it up the previous evening after work, a simple device that connected to his phone, small enough to blend in among the stuffed animals on the nursery shelf. The guilt of not telling Rebecca about it gnawed at him, but he pushed it aside. Sometimes, he reasoned, you had to trust your instincts over protocol. "I'm sorry, baby boy," he whispered to Liam, who was playing happily in his crib, unaware of his father's internal struggle. but Daddy needs to know what's happening when he's not here. Tyrell positioned the camera carefully, angling it to capture most of the nursery. He placed a second one in the living room, disguised among the family photos, and a third in the kitchen. His hands trembled slightly as he tested the feed on his phone. 3 clear views of the main areas where Judith spent time with Liam. The sound of Rebecca's footsteps on the stairs made him quickly pocket his phone. "Mom just texted," she announced, appearing in the doorway. "She'll be here in 20 minutes. "Great," Tyrell managed, picking up Liam. His son snuggled against his chest, and Tyrell held him a little tighter than usual. "I should head to work early today. Big project meeting." Rebecca's face fell slightly. "I thought you might stay a few minutes. Help Mom get settled in." "Better if I don't," Tyrell said, trying to keep his voice neutral. "You know how Liam gets when we're both leaving at the same time?" It wasn't entirely a lie. Transitions were harder on Liam when both parents left simultaneously. But the real reason Tyrell wanted to leave early was to have uninterrupted access to the camera feeds. He'd arranged to work from home, setting up in a coffee shop 2 blocks away, where he could monitor everything. After kissing Rebecca goodbye and forcing himself to hand Liam over, Tyrell drove to the coffee shop, his heart racing. He found a quiet corner booth, ordered a large coffee, and opened his laptop, positioning it to hide his phone screen from view. The first hour was uneventful. Judith moved through her usual routine, feeding Liam breakfast, though he refused to eat much, attempting to play with him, though he cried whenever she came too close, and finally putting him down for his morning nap. But even in these mundane activities, Tyrell noticed things he hadn't been able to see before. The way Judith's smile disappeared the moment she turned away from Liam. The irritated set of her shoulders when he cried. The complete lack of the natural affection most grandmothers showed. No gentle touches, no loving words, no genuine attempt to comfort him. Around mid-morning, Tyrell watched as Judith tried to feed Liam again. The baby turned his head away from the spoon, whimpering. "Stubborn, just like your father," Judith muttered, her voice clearly picked up by the camera's microphone. She set the bowl down with more force than necessary. I don't know what Rebecca was thinking. Tyrell's fingers tightened around his coffee cup. He watched as Judith walked away from the high chair, leaving Liam to cry while she texted on her phone. 5 minutes passed. 10. The baby's cries grew more desperate. Finally, Judith returned, her face a mask of false concern. "Oh, what's wrong, precious?" she cooed, her voice syrupy sweet but her eyes cold. "Are we being difficult again?" The morning dragged on, and Tyrell documented everything he saw. Every dismissive gesture, every moment of neglect, every cold look. But it wasn't until after lunch that things took a truly dark turn. Liam was fighting his afternoon nap, crying in his crib while Judith sat in the nursery rocker, scrolling through her phone. His cries grew louder, more insistent. "For heaven's sake," Judith snapped, standing abruptly. She moved to the crib, her back to the camera but her voice clear. "You're just like them, aren't you? Always making a fuss, always wanting attention. I told Rebecca she was making a mistake, but she wouldn't listen. Now look what she's done to this family." Tyrell felt his blood run cold. He watched in horror as Judith leaned over the crib. "If you don't quiet down right now." She reached into the crib, and Liam's cry suddenly became sharp, pained. The camera caught Judith's movement, her fingers pinching Liam's arm, hard enough to make him scream. "There," she said, smoothing her cardigan. "Maybe that will teach you some manners." Tyrell was already on his feet, coffee forgotten, hands shaking as he gathered his things. But before he could rush out the door, he forced himself to stop and think. Rebecca would be home in less than an hour. He needed evidence, clear, undeniable evidence that would finally open her eyes to what her mother was doing. Fighting every paternal instinct that screamed at him to run home, Tyrell sat back down and continued to watch. He recorded everything, backing up the footage to multiple places. His jaw clenched as he watched Judith's behavior swing between cold neglect and moments of actual cruelty, always followed by picture-perfect grandmother performances whenever she heard a noise that might be someone at the door. When Rebecca texted to say she was on her way home, Tyrell watched Judith transform. She picked up Liam, who was still crying, and began singing softly, though her grip on him looked uncomfortable. She straightened the nursery, wiped his tears, and planted a kiss on his forehead just as Rebecca's key turned in the lock. "How is he today?" Rebecca's voice came through the camera feed. "Oh, just perfect," Judith lied smoothly, bouncing a still sniffling Liam on her hip. "We had such a wonderful day, didn't we, precious?" Tyrell couldn't watch anymore. He closed the video feeds and sat back in his chair, his coffee long cold and untouched. The weight of what he'd discovered pressed down on him, like a physical thing. It wasn't just prejudice or coldness. It was actual abuse. His mother-in-law was deliberately hurting his son, and using her performance as the doting grandmother to cover it up. The drive home was a blur. Tyrell's mind raced with how to handle this. He couldn't just show Rebecca the footage without warning. The shock might be too much. But he couldn't let another day pass with Judith having access to Liam. Tyrell's hands trembled as he held his phone, the damning video footage weighing heavy in his grip. The living room felt smaller than usual, the walls closing in as he waited for Rebecca to return from putting Liam down for his nap. His heart pounded against his chest, knowing that what he was about to show her would change their family forever. Rebecca walked in, a soft smile on her face. "You went down so easily today. I think Mom's really getting better at." She stopped short when she saw Tyrell's expression. "What's wrong?" Tyrell took a deep breath, his voice steadier than he felt. "We need to talk about your mother, Rebecca. There's something you need to see." Rebecca's smile faded as she sank into the couch beside him. "What do you mean? Did something happen?" "I set up cameras in the house," Tyrell admitted, watching her face carefully. "I needed to know why our son was crying every time your mother was around. I needed to know I wasn't crazy." Rebecca's eyes widened, then narrowed. "You did what?" "Tyrell, how could you? That's a complete invasion of privacy. My mother would never." "Watch the video, Rebecca." Tyrell's voice was firm but gentle. "Please, just watch it." Rebecca crossed her arms, anger flickering across her features. "This is ridiculous. You're letting your paranoia about my mother cloud your judgment. She's been nothing but helpful. And yes, maybe she's a bit old-fashioned, but she loves Liam. If that's true, then watching this video shouldn't be a problem." Tyrell held out his phone. "Please, baby, trust me on this." With visible reluctance, Rebecca took the phone. Tyrell pressed play, and the footage began. At first, it showed Judith going about her normal routine with Liam, but then the baby started crying. The transformation in Judith's demeanor was immediate and chilling. Rebecca's hands began to shake as she watched her mother's face contort with frustration. The sound of Judith's angry muttering filled the room. "Just like your father, always making noise, always causing trouble. Should have known better than to let Rebecca marry one of them." Then came the moment that had made Tyrell's blood run cold. Judith's swift, cruel pinch to Liam's leg, causing the baby to wail even louder. The camera caught everything. The deliberate act of harm, the flash of satisfaction on Judith's face, and the immediate switch to concerned grandmother mode when she heard Rebecca's footsteps approaching. "No," Rebecca whispered, her face draining of color. "No, no, no." The phone slipped from her trembling fingers, and Tyrell caught it before it hit the floor. "This can't be real. She couldn't." "There's more," Tyrell said quietly, but Rebecca was already standing, pacing the room with her hands pressed to her temples. "Maybe she was just having a bad day," Rebecca said, her voice rising with hysteria. "Maybe she's been stressed. You know how demanding Liam can be, and Mom's not as young as she used to be. Maybe." "Rebecca." Tyrell stood, crossing the room to take her hands in his. "Listen to what she said. Really listen. This isn't about stress. This isn't about Liam being fussy. Your mother hurt our son because of me, because of what I am." Tears spilled down Rebecca's cheeks as the truth of his words sank in. "But she's my mother," she whispered brokenly. "She's supposed to love him. She's supposed to love us." "I know, baby." Tyrell pulled her into his arms, feeling her body shake with sobs. "I know." They stood like that for several minutes, Rebecca crying into his chest while Tyrell held her, his own eyes burning with unshed tears. Finally, Rebecca pulled back, wiping her face with trembling hands. "We need to confront her," she said, her voice hoarse but determined. "I need to hear it from her. I need to know why." Tyrell nodded slowly. I'll call her. Ask her to come over. The next hour was the longest of their lives. They sat in tense silence, Rebecca occasionally getting up to check on Liam, who was still sleeping peacefully, blissfully unaware of the storm about to break over their family. When the doorbell rang, Tyrell and Rebecca exchanged a look. Rebecca squeezed his hand, drawing strength from his presence as they went to answer the door together. Judith stood on their porch, her usual pleasant mask in place. Rebecca, darling, Tyrell. Her smile dimmed slightly at his name, something they'd both noticed 1,000 times before but had chosen to ignore. Never again. Come in, Mom, Rebecca said, her voice tight. We need to talk. They led Judith to the living room, where Tyrell's phone sat on the coffee table like a loaded gun. Judith took her usual seat, looking between them with growing concern. What's going on? Is something wrong with Liam? You could say that, Tyrell replied, picking up his phone. We know what you've been doing, Judith. We have proof. Judith's expression flickered for just a moment before settling into confused innocence. I don't know what you're talking about. What proof? What are you accusing me of? Without a word, Tyrell played the video. The sound of Liam's cries filled the room once again, followed by Judith's muttered racism and the unmistakable moment of abuse. Judith's face went through a rapid series of emotions. Shock, anger, fear, and finally, defiance. You had no right to film me, she spat, turning to Rebecca. Honey, surely you can see this is a violation of privacy. He's trying to turn you against me. Don't. Rebecca's voice cracked. Don't you dare try to make this about Tyrell. I saw what you did. I heard what you said. How could you hurt my baby? I didn't hurt him, Judith protested, but her voice was weaker now. He was being difficult. Sometimes babies need a firm hand. A firm hand? Tyrell's voice rose with controlled anger. You pinched him. You hurt him on purpose, because he looks like me, because he's black. You don't understand, Judith said, her mask finally cracking. I tried to accept it. I tried to be happy for Rebecca, but every time I look at that child, I see everything I fought against. Everything I tried to protect her from. Rebecca gasped, stumbling backward as if physically struck. Protect me? From what, Mom? From love? From happiness? From having a beautiful family? From ruining her life? Judith burst out, years of carefully hidden prejudice spilling forth like poison. From making everything harder than it needs to be. Do you think I don't see the looks you get when you're out together? Do you think I don't worry about what that child will face? I try to guide you toward a better life, Rebecca, toward someone more appropriate. More white, you mean? Tyrell said quietly, his voice heavy with understanding. That's what this has always been about, hasn't it? From the moment Rebecca brought me home, Judith's silence was answer enough. Rebecca moved to stand beside Tyrell, her hand finding his. I want you to leave, Rebecca said, her voice shaking but firm. I want you to leave our house and never come back. I don't want you near my son ever again. Rebecca, please. Judith stood, reaching for her daughter. You can't mean that. I'm your mother. No. Rebecca stepped back, tears streaming down her face. A mother protects. A mother loves unconditionally. A mother doesn't hurt her grandchild because of the color of his skin. You're not the mother I thought you were, and you're not the grandmother Liam deserves. You're choosing them over me? Judith's voice was incredulous, hurt mixing with anger. After everything I've done for you? I'm choosing love over hate, Rebecca replied. I'm choosing my family over your prejudice. Please leave, Mom. Just go. Judith looked between them, her face hardening as she realized she'd lost. Without another word, she grabbed her purse and walked to the door. She paused in the doorway, turning back one last time. When you realize what a mistake you're making. Goodbye, Mom. Rebecca cut her off, her voice final. The door closed with a quiet click that somehow seemed to echo through the house. Rebecca stood frozen for a moment before her knees buckled. Tyrell caught her, lowering them both to the floor as she broke down in his arms. I'm so sorry, she sobbed. I'm so sorry I didn't see it. I'm sorry I didn't believe you. I'm sorry I let her near our baby. Shoo. Tyrell stroked her hair. You couldn't have known. You wanted to believe the best about her. That's not a bad thing. But I should have known, Rebecca insisted, pulling back to look at him. All those times she made those little comments, all those looks she gave you. I told myself she just needed time to adjust, that she'd come around eventually. I was so blind. We both wanted to believe she could change, Tyrell said softly. But some people don't want to change. They'd rather hold on to their hate than open their hearts to love. From upstairs, they heard Liam beginning to stir. Rebecca wiped her eyes, taking a deep breath. He's never going to cry because of her again, she said firmly. He's never going to feel unwanted or unloved in his own home. Tyrell helped her to her feet, pulling her close for one more embrace. No, he won't. He's got us, and we're all he needs. Together, they climbed the stairs to their son's room, where Liam was just waking up. When he saw them, he broke into a wide, toothless grin, reaching out with both arms. As Rebecca lifted him from his crib, holding him close while Tyrell wrapped his arms around them both, they knew that while this day had brought pain and loss, it had also brought truth and liberation. Their family might be smaller now, but it was stronger. Stronger in its truth, stronger in its love, and stronger in its commitment to protecting the innocent joy in their son's eyes. As painful as the confrontation had been, they knew they'd made the right choice. Sometimes the hardest truth was better than the most comfortable lie. Liam's happy babbling filled the room, washing away the bitter taste of Judith's words. In that moment, looking at their beautiful son and holding each other close, Tyrell and Rebecca silently renewed their commitment to creating a home filled with love, acceptance, and the kind of unconditional support that true family should provide. The truth had indeed been shocking, but it had also been necessary. As the afternoon sun streamed through the nursery windows, casting a warm glow over their little family, they knew that while this chapter had ended painfully, a new one was beginning. One where their son would grow up surrounded by nothing but genuine love and acceptance, free from the poison of prejudice that had finally been exposed and excised from their lives. The house felt eerily quiet after Judith's departure. Tyrell sat on the edge of their couch, his phone heavy in his hands as Rebecca gently rocked Liam in the nursery upstairs. The confrontation replayed in his mind. Judith's face contorted with anger, her true feelings finally exposed after years of carefully maintained pretense. His finger hovered over the keypad, knowing what he had to do, but understanding that this call would change everything. Taking a deep breath, he dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher's voice was calm and professional. I need to report a case of child abuse, Tyrell said, his voice steady despite the emotion churning inside him. I have video evidence of my mother-in-law physically harming my infant son and making racist remarks while doing so. Is the child currently in danger, sir? No, my son is safe now. He's with his mother, and the person who hurt him has left our home. But I have clear video evidence of the abuse, and I want to press charges. The dispatcher took down their address and basic information. Officers will be there shortly. Please don't delete or alter the video evidence in any way. I won't, Tyrell assured her. Thank you. He ended the call and walked upstairs to the nursery, where Rebecca was sitting in the rocking chair, holding Liam close. Their son had fallen asleep, his tiny hand clutching his mother's finger. I called the police, Tyrell said softly, not wanting to wake Liam. Rebecca looked up, her eyes red from crying, but clear with understanding. Good, she whispered. She needs to face consequences for what she did. Her voice caught. I just can't believe we have to do this. Tyrell knelt beside the rocking chair, placing his hand on Liam's back, feeling his son's steady breathing. I know, baby, but we have to protect him. What your mother did wasn't just wrong. It was criminal. Before Rebecca could respond, they heard the sound of police cars pulling up outside. Tyrell squeezed her shoulder gently. I'll go down and talk to them. You stay here with Liam. Rebecca nodded, pressing a kiss to their sleeping son's forehead. Tyrell opened the front door to find two officers on their porch, a tall woman with kind eyes and a shorter man with graying temples. They introduced themselves as Officer Williams and Officer Martinez. Please come in, Tyrell said, leading them to the living room. I have the video footage ready to show you. Officer Williams took out her notepad while Officer Martinez set up a small camera to record their conversation. Walk us through what happened, Mr. Washington. Tyrell explained everything. How Liam had always cried around Judith, his growing suspicions, the decision to set up cameras, and finally, what the footage revealed. As he played the video for them, both officers' expressions grew grave. "This is serious," Officer Williams said, pausing the video after the scene where Judith pinched Liam. "The physical abuse is clear, and the racial comments add another concerning dimension to this case." "Where is your son now?" Officer Martinez asked. "Upstairs with his mother. He's sleeping." "And Mrs. Washington? Is she willing to make a statement?" Tyrell nodded. "Yes, she is. She's upstairs with our son, but I can get her." "Please do," Officer Williams said. "We'll need both of your statements." Tyrell went back upstairs, finding Rebecca had just placed Liam in his crib. "The officers want to talk to you," he said gently. "Are you ready?" Rebecca straightened her shoulders, wiping her eyes. "Yes, I need to do this. For Liam." They descended the stairs together, hand in hand. The officers greeted Rebecca with professional sympathy, and Officer Williams moved to sit beside her on the couch. "Mrs. Washington, we understand this is difficult," she said kindly. "But we need to hear your perspective on what happened." Rebecca's voice trembled as she began speaking, but grew stronger as she continued. "I didn't want to believe it at first. When Tyrell showed me the video, I tried to make excuses for her behavior. But seeing her hurt my baby, hearing those horrible things she said," she took a shuddering breath. "I should have listened to Tyrell sooner. He tried to tell me something wasn't right, but I dismissed his concerns. I thought he was being oversensitive about my mother's attitude." "Can you elaborate on that?" Officer Martinez asked, taking notes. "My mother never approved of my relationship with Tyrell," Rebecca explained. "She tried to hide it, but there were always little comments, little looks. I told myself she just needed time to adjust, that once she got to know Tyrell better, once she saw what a wonderful father he is." She wiped away fresh tears. "I was wrong. She never intended to accept our family." The officers exchanged glances. "We'll need to bring your mother in for questioning," Officer Williams said. "Do you know where she might be now?" "Probably at her house," Rebecca replied. "She lives about 20 minutes from here, on Maple Drive." While Officer Martinez stepped outside to radio in Judith's address, Officer Williams continued gathering their statement. She asked detailed questions about the frequency of Judith's visits, any previous incidents they might have noticed, and the timeline of events. "You did the right thing by recording this," she assured them. "Too often, these situations go unreported because they happen behind closed doors, especially when family is involved." About 30 minutes into taking their statements, Officer Martinez returned. "Mrs. Anderson has been located and is being brought in for questioning," he reported. "She's denying any wrongdoing, claiming it was just a moment of frustration during babysitting." Rebecca made a small sound of disbelief. "A moment of frustration? She hurt my baby on purpose because of his race. She admitted it right here, in our living room. We have the video evidence," Officer Williams reminded her gently. "In your testimonies. This isn't a case of one person's word against another's." The next few hours passed in a blur of paperwork and questions. The officers took detailed statements, documented everything, and made copies of the video evidence. They explained the process of filing charges and what Tyrell and Rebecca could expect going forward. "Given the evidence, this is a clear case of child abuse," Officer Williams explained. "The racial component could also lead to additional charges. The district attorney's office will review everything and determine how to proceed." "What happens now?" Tyrell asked, his arm around Rebecca's shoulders. "Your mother-in-law will be questioned," Officer Martinez said. "Given the video evidence and your statements, there will likely be charges filed. In the meantime, we strongly recommend you get a restraining order to ensure she can't come near your son." "We'll do that first thing tomorrow," Rebecca said firmly. "I don't want her anywhere near Liam ever again." As the officers prepared to leave, Officer Williams paused at the door. "Mr. and Mrs. Washington, I know this isn't easy. Reporting family members for abuse never is. But you're doing the right thing by protecting your son." After the police left, Tyrell and Rebecca sat together on their couch, emotionally drained but somehow lighter. The weight of suspicion and uncertainty had been replaced by the clarity of action and the knowledge that they were doing what needed to be done. I keep thinking about all the times I left him with her, Rebecca said quietly. All the times he cried, and I just thought he was being fussy. What kind of mother am I? Hey, Tyrell turned to face her, taking her hands in his. You're an amazing mother. You trusted your own mother, because that's what daughters are supposed to be able to do. But the moment you saw the truth, you acted to protect our son. That's what matters. From upstairs, they heard Liam beginning to stir. Rebecca squeezed Tyrell's hands before standing up. You're right. And now we make sure he's never hurt again. They walked upstairs together, entering the nursery where Liam was just waking up. Their son's face lit up when he saw them, his little arms reaching up, completely unaware of the day's events or how his world had just shifted. As Rebecca lifted him from the crib, Tyrell wrapped his arms around them both. Despite the emotional exhaustion of the day, they felt a profound sense of relief. The truth was out, action had been taken, and most importantly, their son was safe. We did the right thing, Rebecca whispered, more to herself than to Tyrell. We did, he agreed, watching as Liam grabbed at his finger with a happy gurgle. Sometimes doing the right thing hurts, but that doesn't make it any less right. They stood there together, their little family unit whole and protected, knowing that while the road ahead might be difficult, they had taken the necessary steps to ensure their son's safety. The police were handling the legal aspects, and they would handle the emotional ones together as a family. Liam's innocent laughter filled the room, a reminder of why they had to take such drastic action. His joy, his safety, his future, these were worth any amount of personal pain or family turmoil. As the evening sun cast long shadows through the nursery window, Tyrell and Rebecca held their son close, secure in the knowledge that they had chosen to stand up for what was right, no matter the cost. The 911 call that Tyrell had made wasn't just about reporting a crime. It was about breaking a cycle of abuse and prejudice, about choosing their son's well-being over family ties, about standing up against racism even when it wore the mask of a grandmother's face. It was a declaration that love and protection would always trump blood ties and social expectations. As night fell and they prepared for bed, both Tyrell and Rebecca knew that while this chapter of their lives had been painful, it had also been necessary. They had faced the truth, taken action, and put their son's safety first. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, restraining orders to file, legal proceedings to face, and family dynamics to navigate. But they would face it all together, stronger for having chosen truth over comfort, protection over prejudice, and love over fear. The courthouse stood imposing against the gray autumn sky as Tyrell and Rebecca walked hand in hand through its heavy wooden doors. Today was the final hearing in Judith's case, marking the end of what had been 3 grueling months of legal proceedings. The evidence had been clear. The video footage showing Judith's abuse of baby Liam left little room for interpretation. Inside the courtroom, Judith sat straight-backed in her pressed navy suit, her silver hair perfectly coiffed as always. But the mask of respectability she'd worn for so long had cracked, revealing the darkness that lay beneath. As the judge delivered her sentence, Rebecca squeezed Tyrell's hand so hard her knuckles turned white. Mrs. Judith Anderson, after reviewing all evidence and testimony in this case, this court finds you guilty of child abuse. The judge's voice echoed through the silent courtroom. You are hereby sentenced to 2 years probation. Additionally, a restraining order will be put in place, prohibiting you from coming within 500 feet of Tyrell Washington, Rebecca Washington, or Liam Washington. Rebecca's breath caught in her throat, though she'd known this was coming. Hearing the words made it real in a way nothing else had. Her mother, the woman who had raised her, who had kissed her scraped knees and taught her to bake cookies, was now legally branded as an abuser. You okay? Tyrell whispered, his thumb stroking small circles on the back of her hand. Rebecca nodded, though tears threatened to spill from her eyes. It's necessary, she whispered back. For Liam. As they left the courthouse, reporters clustered around them, microphones thrust forward like weapons. Tyrell sheltered Rebecca with his arm as they pushed through the crowd, ignoring the barrage of questions. They'd learned early on not to engage. Their story had become a media sensation, sparking heated debates about race, family, and hidden prejudices. Back home, Their neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, was watching Liam. The elderly woman had become a godsend during the trial, providing childcare without judgment or prejudice. When they walked in, Liam was sleeping peacefully in his playpen, his tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. He was an angel, Mrs. Johnson assured them, gathering her things. How did it go? As well as it could, Tyrell replied, his voice heavy with emotion. Thank you for everything. After Mrs. Johnson left, Rebecca sank onto the couch, finally letting the tears flow freely. I never thought it would end like this, she sobbed. My own mother. Tyrell sat beside her, pulling her close. We did what we had to do. For our son. The following week, they had their first therapy session with Dr. Maria Santos, a family counselor specializing in trauma and racial dynamics. Her office was warm and welcoming, with soft lighting and comfortable chairs arranged in a circle. Tell me why you're here, Dr. Santos began, her gentle voice encouraging openness. Rebecca and Tyrell exchanged glances. We need help, Rebecca admitted. What happened with my mother, it's created this wall between us. We love each other, but there's so much pain and anger and guilt. Over the next several sessions, they began to unpack the complex emotions surrounding Judith's actions. Rebecca struggled particularly hard with her feelings of responsibility. I should have seen it, she said during one tearful session. All those times Liam cried when she held him. The way she'd make those little comments about Tyrell. I was so blind. Dr. Santos leaned forward. Rebecca, you're carrying a burden that isn't yours to bear. Your mother made her choices. Her actions reflect on her character, not yours. But I'm his mother, Rebecca insisted. I'm supposed to protect him, and you did protect him, Tyrell interjected, surprising both Rebecca and Dr. Santos with his forceful tone. The moment you saw that video, you chose Liam. You chose us. That's what matters. These breakthrough moments came slowly but surely. Each session helped them understand their pain better, helped them see how they could move forward together rather than letting this tragedy tear them apart. One evening, after a particularly intense therapy session, Rebecca and Tyrell sat on their back porch, watching the sunset. Liam was asleep inside, monitored by the new baby camera they'd installed. I need you to know something, Rebecca said, turning to face her husband. I will never doubt you again. When you have concerns about our son, I will listen. Really listen. Tyrell was quiet for a long moment. I appreciate that, he finally said. But it's not just about listening. It's about understanding that sometimes, because of who I am, I see things you might miss. Not because you're blind, but because you haven't had to develop the same instincts I have. Rebecca nodded, tears welling in her eyes. I understand that now. And I promise you, Tyrell, I will stand by you. Always. No matter who it is, family, friends, strangers. If anyone threatens our family's happiness or safety, they'll have to go through both of us. Their healing process wasn't linear. There were still days when Rebecca would catch herself reaching for the phone to call her mother, only to remember she couldn't. Days when Tyrell would tense up if someone who looked like Judith passed them on the street. But they faced these moments together, supporting each other through the hard times. They began creating new traditions to replace the old ones. Sunday dinners, once dominated by Judith's presence, became intimate family affairs. They invited friends over, real friends who loved and accepted their family completely. Liam flourished in this environment of unconditional love, growing into a happy, confident toddler who showed no lasting effects from his grandmother's abuse. 6 months after the trial, they made a decision that would mark their fresh start. They bought a new house in a diverse neighborhood across town, away from the shadows of their past. The moving day was bright and sunny, as if nature itself approved of their choice. As the movers carried in the last of their furniture, Tyrell and Rebecca stood in their new backyard, watching Liam toddle around on the grass. He had just learned to walk and was exploring his new kingdom with unbridled enthusiasm. Mama! Dada! Look, he called out, pointing at a butterfly that had landed on a nearby flower. Rebecca leaned into Tyrell's embrace, feeling truly at peace for the first time in months. We made it, she whispered. We did more than make it, Tyrell replied, kissing the top of her head. We grew stronger. Look at him. That's what we fought for. They watched as Liam continued his exploration, his laughter carrying on the warm breeze. The garden was full of possibilities. Space for a swing set, room for a sandbox, maybe even a small vegetable patch where they could teach Liam about growing things. I want to plant a tree, Rebecca said suddenly. Right there, she pointed to a sunny spot near the fence. Something that will grow with our family. Something strong and beautiful. Tyrell smiled, understanding the symbolism. I like that idea. Maybe a maple? They're resilient, and their leaves turn all sorts of amazing colors in the fall. That weekend, they planted the tree together, all three of them. Tyrell dug the hole while Rebecca held Liam, letting him drop handfuls of soil around the sapling's roots. As they worked, their new neighbors came by to introduce themselves. A Korean family on one side, an elderly black couple on the other, a white family across the street with kids close to Liam's age. Their new home quickly became filled with the sounds of life and laughter. Pictures of their small family adorned the walls. Liam's first steps, beach trips, playground adventures. There were no photos of Judith, but Rebecca had made peace with that absence. She had learned that family wasn't about blood or obligation. It was about love, respect, and protecting those who depended on you. One evening, as they sat on their new porch swing watching the sunset, Liam asleep in his room upstairs, Rebecca turned to Tyrell. Thank you, she said simply. For what? For not giving up? On me, on us. For fighting for our son when I couldn't see what was happening. For being strong enough to make that 911 call, even knowing what it would mean for our family. Tyrell pulled her closer. We're stronger together. That's what family really means. As the sky turned purple and gold, they sat in comfortable silence, listening to the wind rustling through their newly planted maple tree. The leaves seemed to whisper promises of growth, of healing, of new beginnings. Their family had weathered a storm that could have torn them apart, but instead, they had emerged stronger, more united, and more committed than ever to protecting the love they shared. The security system beeped softly, reminding them it was time to lock up for the night. This new routine, checking doors, monitoring cameras, ensuring their son's safety, no longer felt like a burden born of trauma. Instead, it was a reminder of their commitment to never again let anyone threaten their family's happiness. As they headed inside, hand in hand, they knew that while they couldn't change the past, they had taken control of their future. Their new home wasn't just a house. It was a sanctuary, a fresh start, and a promise to themselves and to Liam that love, acceptance, and protection would always be the foundation of their family. The maple sapling stood tall in the gathering dusk, its young leaves reaching toward the sky, much like the family that had planted it, growing stronger with each passing day, its roots reaching deep into the soil of their new beginning. The wounds of the past would always be part of their story, but they were no longer its defining chapter. Instead, they had written a new ending, one of healing, hope, and unconditional love. This story is a powerful reminder that protecting our loved ones sometimes means facing the painful truth about those we trust the most. It's not just about keeping our families safe, but about finding the courage to act when something feels wrong, no matter how difficult the decision. How would you have felt if you were in Tyrell's shoes, discovering a secret that could change everything? Have you ever had to make a tough call for the sake of someone you love? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if Tyrell and Rebecca's journey resonated with you, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss more heartfelt and emotional stories like this one.